Ladies and gentlemen.
Clearly Australia has the hardest, most draconian laws on vaping probably anywhere in the world right now. But you know what it's done? Predictably, it's opened up a massive black market. You know, the whole irony is it's easier to get a vape and it's cheaper to buy a cigarette than it ever has been before in Australia in this century. It's the cheapest cigarettes you can buy in Australia this century because the black market own they're the new tobacco control in Australia essentially. Now let's have a look at the connect there with how do they come to make these fantastic decisions that saw the Laffer curve happen, or the point of diminishing returns where the tax excise, where we fast become the most expensive place to buy a cigarette in the world, to now becoming one of the cheapest in the South Pacific to buy a cigarette. I mean, you can buy a packet of 20 cigarettes starting from $6 here in Australia right now, and everywhere you want. In fact, there was a fantastic article that was released in the last week that showed that there are 60 new tobacconists where you can buy illicit vapes and cigarettes to every McDonald's. 60 more than every McDonald's store, and McDonald's have got franchises everywhere. So, absolutely massive. It's a growth industry. So, how did that happen? And how did that, what part did the World Health Organization have in that? Well, World Health Organization, let's just very, very briefly have a look at this. Now, approximately 11, 12 years ago, they said their statement, not anybody else's, their statement. If we keep going as we are right now, we're going to lose up to 1 billion lives this century. That's what they said. Here we are, 11, 12 years later. How much success have they had? Well, right as we stand, we're on track to lose 1.2 billion lives this century. Well, obviously, that isn't not an improvement. So why would Australia go lean in on in every context of Australian government public health policy leans in on World Health Organization guidelines, particularly 5.3. 5.3 briefly basically says, if there's any interference from anywhere, particularly made to keep tobacco companies out of the narrative, that we keep them out of the narrative. But of course, I guess as Code was alluding to before, is they've kind of started creating this cultish own ideological narrative on what that actually means. I mean, we're seeing consumers who can no longer get their vapes by legal means advocating for vaping and just being blocked out of the conversation here in Australia. And if there's, but not only consumers, make no mistake, we're seeing the majority of harm reduction experts right across Australia. You'll see it on our website. We have well over 50 amazing experienced harm reduction experts with over 30 years on average per expert, with 7 Order of Australia medalists, with people who are from epidemiology to psychology, well qualified people who have been shut out of the conversation. Why? Because apparently their narrative doesn't suit the guidelines of the World Health Organization. They only happen to suit those who may have maybe some sort of drug addiction or something like that. We might bend to those type of people then. But hey, when it comes to tobacco and when it comes to vaping, we shouldn't listen to them. So look, that said, hey, us consumers and a far wider array and range of harm reduction advocates We're going to endeavour to come together and we're going to rewrite this narrative here in Australia, with or without the World Health Organization. At least that's the goal. It's a big goal, I get it, but we're doing our darndest to do that. We make sure that us consumers are heard first and foremost, because no longer should the experts and the consumers be ignored just because Australia wants to be seen being the little country. Because, right, okay, big country by size, lots of koalas, kangaroos, stuff that'll kill you, including our government. So, with that, they want to be seen as bigger than they are, so they don't mind pouring some money into the World Health Organization, FCTC. Sure, they'll be shouting from the rooftops and celebrating the likes of Emily Banks with the World Health Organization awards. But you know what? 66 people a day die from a tobacco-related illness every day here in Australia. That's 24,000 a year. That's every 4 years you think of the largest stadiums in the world that seat 100,000 people gone. Didn't have to be. Didn't have to be this way. We could have done something about it. But we've got to listen to the real experts and the consumers. World Health Organization could do a lot better to do the same so they can improve their level of success if they've got any success to report moving forward.
Yeah, they seem to have lost control completely in Australia, haven't they? And this is what Kurt said, that the WHO ranks countries on not how they are performing by getting rid of smoking, but by how they are performing in following the rules of the WHO, which isn't the same thing. So
Lost control is an understatement. We are literally seeing, we have seen the government throw $1 billion at this just in enforcement. $1 billion to play something that you could imagine like a Benny Hill comedy with, running people down the street. And it kind of is, it is comical because it is a massive game of whack-a-mole. There is no chance that even the biggest army that Australia could form will close down the illicit market. You know what? In the history of Australian history, we have, in all the drug wars and everything we've had, let me tell you, we have not seen a bigger debacle, a bigger drug related problem, if I can call it that, um, in Australian history of this magnitude ever, to the point where we've seen 246 suburban fire bombings happening as black market operators fight over each other for turf so that they can make more money and sell more product. This, yeah, I think one lesson to the rest of the world as we consider World Vape Day is, by Lord, don't go down this road. It's not worth it. It's not pretty.
yeah,
Businesses
exactly.
can't even be insured. Yeah, and if you want to if they want to sort of play grandstanding and virtue signaling on what is the hot topic at the time and all that sort of thing, because LGBTQI rights are on the table and trendy as they probably were maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and maybe just that might vary depending where you are in the world. Um, Look, this isn't the time to grandstand and virtue signal. This is obviously with every cohort, there must be real action and serious action and compassion taken and really listen to people.
And the situation with you, Pippa, in Australia, what are the vape products you can buy? And are they flavored? Are they what are they?
Um, Right, so we've got a choice of tobacco, mint, and menthol. If you could be bothered going to find one of only a handful of chemists who may be interested in selling you an overpriced system that looks something like that, um, very boring, very plain, very substandard, often nicotined at a very high level, which is very difficult to self titrate or self-regulate the amount of nicotine you might want to use. So, yeah, people just go to the black market. The black market dominates. And can I just sort of say on flavors, leading on a little bit from what Kurt Yeo was saying, I want to make an interesting point. They want to lump vaping in as a tobacco product, and they want to say no flavors. Well, let me tell you a fun fact. The fun fact is most most legal cigarettes on the market, the ones you smoke, the combustible ones, contain PG based flavorings. They well, I don't care whether it's tobacco flavor, vanilla flavor, Timbuktu flavor, Port Royal tobacco, they contain a PG based flavourings. They have for years, even before there was vaping, right? So if you want to ban flavourings, ban the flavourings out of the things that kill you, that we know combustible tobacco obviously does.
Can I introduce,
Now, I
sorry,
think it's,
interject there, Pippa? Maybe they should also
yeah,
introduce a tobacco lozenge, Nicorette or nicotine gum and lozenge. Introduce tobacco flavored gums and lozenges.
Yeah, because they're all
So
fruity
that
flavors,
well,
aren't
look, why don't we introduce Alcohol Anonymous meetings to become inside a pub where they can, exercise self-control. Come on, it isn't going to happen. It's a ridiculous thing to do. Why don't we ban light beer so everybody's got to drink heavy beer? It's a ridiculous notion. It's ridiculous. You can make a multitude of metaphorical statements, whether it be, let's ban low-fat product and only have the high-fat product or whatever. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. Let's face it, most governments involved with the World Health Organization benefit greatly from the taxes that are from the sale of tobacco products. That is the problem. That is a huge problem. The World Health Organization don't seem to be really helping there. Um, but I'll tell you what has come out of this discussion that I've learned tonight, including God help the UK, God save our King, God save everything over there, because I've seen the history of some fire bombings happening in the UK before. If they go down this route of prohibition, and let's call it prohibition, it is what it is. Remember the great Winston Churchill once had to fill out a prescription for some whiskey in the US of A back in the day of prohibition. It is prohibition under any form. They are in for a hell of a ride. We are very tame, very loving, very friendly souls here in Australia, as I know many people are in the UK. But I'll tell you what, you let this whole black market on the loose, it's not something that you can reel back in easily. In fact, our government is grappling right now to work out how the hell they can reel this back in, and they're losing it. They're losing it.
If I can just add to that, what's interesting is that, somebody has literally died as a result of these fire bombings. And I remember bringing this up to a UK policymaker. They just almost completely ignore the fact that it's happening. It's quite psychologically, I think, fascinating that the Australian example is literally just simply being ignored. They just completely refuse to accept that that is a possibility, and that what they're doing is on the road towards what Australia have done.
Well, I suggest them to ignore at their own peril. Ignore at their own peril. If they want to have the next Godfather movie based about what happened in the UK between 2025 and 2035, and real life. I mean, in all seriousness, innocent people murdered, people shot before, people having gang fights in broad daylight in shopping centre car parks. People pulled up at traffic lights with a knife. This is Australia.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you should have to worry about here in Australia is not gunfire. is not bombings. I mean, we've got enough to worry about with the spiders and the snakes and the crocodiles and the sharks, okay?